teammates and I will going to explain about experiment 1 of the inorganic chemistry practical 2, and the title is Synthesis and Analysis of Copper Coordination Compounds. In this experiment, a copper complex will be synthesized and its molecular formula will be determined by using 3 analytical techniques. There are gravimetric analysis, which used to determine sulfate ions, volumetric analysis, which used to determine ammonia molecules, and spectrophotometric analysis, which used to determine copper ions.
There are 2 common types of gravimetric analysis, which are volatilization gravimetry and precipitation gravimetry. Both techniques involve changing the phase of analyze to separate it from the rest of a mixture, and this will result in a change in mass. Precipitation gravimetry will be used in experiment 1. In precipitation gravimetry technique, precipitation reaction is being used to separate one or more parts of a solution by incorporating it into a solid. The phase change occurs since the analyze reacts to form a solid precipitate. The solid can be separated from the liquid component by filtration. The mass of the solid is being used to calculate the amount or concentration of the ionic compound in the solution.
Volumetric analysis is an analytical method to find out the volume or concentration of an analyze in a solution. This is done by measuring the volume of a standard solution of an appropriate reagent whose concentration is already known. The procedure is based on the reaction between the titrant and the analyze. The most common way of carrying out this procedure is titration. The unknown solution was put in the Erlenmeyer flask and then using a burette slowly adds the titrant. The titration is continuing until the color change occurs. The changing of color indicates the reaction is complete. Since the molarity of the standard solution is known, the number of moles of titrant can be calculated. Based on the equation of the reaction, the number of moles of the constituent present in the sample can also be calculated.
Spectrophotometric is a method used to measure how much a chemical substance can absorb the light by measuring the intensity of light when the beam of light is passing through the sample solution. The basic principle is that the compound absorbs or transmits the light over a certain range of wavelength. In this experiment, UV visible spectrophotometer is used as a light source and its wavelength is fixed at 645 nanometer. Here we need to measure the intensity of light that passing through the blank solution and later measure the intensity of light that passing through the analyzed solution. Then calculate the absorbance. The concentrations of the analyzed ions can be determined from the calibration graph of absorbance versus the concentrations of the standard analyzed solutions.
Now we will explain the procedure of the synthesis of copper coordination compound. First, 10 grams of copper sulfate solid was weighed out in a 250 ml of beaker. The solid was dissolved in 10 to 15 ml of distilled water and 20 ml of concentrated aqueous ammonia was added. After that, 10 ml of ethanol 95% was added dropwise into the solution with stirring continuously. The solution A was then allowed to cool down to room temperature. While waiting the solution A to cool down, solution B was prepared by mixing 15 ml of concentrated aqueous ammonia and 15 ml of ethanol 95% in the film hood. Then, solution B was covered with a watch glass and left it in the film hood. Next, solution A was filtered carefully, and the crystal will wash with 10 ml of solution B twice. The crystal will wash twice with 10 ml of ethanol 95% and then twice with 10 ml of excitant. The crystal will collected in a beaker and covered with the filter paper. The crystal will weighed out and recorded. Gravimetric analysis on sulfate ions. First, 1 gram of crystal prepared in part A was weighed out accurately. The sample was first dissolved in 10 ml of 6 molar nitric acid in a beaker. Then, 5 to 6 ml of lead acetate was added in dropwise until the precipitation was completed. A piece of filter paper was weighed out accurately and was used to filter the precipitate by gravitational filtration. The beaker was rinsed with 5 ml of distilled water, and the rinsing water was used to wash the precipitate. Finally, the precipitate was washed with 10 ml of excitant. Then, the precipitate together with the filter paper was dried in an oven at 80 degrees Celsius. The precipitate along with the filter paper was weighed out accurately when they are completely dry, and the mass was recorded. The procedure was then repeated twice. Now we move on to the volumetric analysis on ammonia. First, 1 gram of crystal prepared in part air was weighed out accurately. The sample was dissolved in 30 ml of distilled water in an Erlenmeyer flask. 10 drops of methyl orange indicator were then added into the solution and titrated with 0.5 molar HCl as soon as we can. The color change from dark blue to reddish orange was observed at the endpoint, and the result was recorded. The procedure was then repeated twice. Last, spectrophotometric analysis on copper-2 ions. First, 6 test tubes were cleaned and dried and labeled as 1 through 6. A series of standard calibration solutions and sample solutions as shown in the table were prepared. The absorbance for each standard solution and the samples were measured at 645 nanometer.
In part A, we are going to synthesize the copper coordination compound, and from the result, we managed to obtain the mass of precipitate in 6.07 grams. In part B, we wish to analysis in gravimetric analysis of sulfate ion. We have done 2 experiments, and from the result, we are able to know that we have obtained 1.23 for sample 1 and 1.24 grams for sample 2 respectively. And from the observation, the white precipitate is formed in both samples. In volumetric analysis of ammonia, in Replicon 1, we have used 33.2 cm³ of HCl to titrate with NH3, and in Replicon 2, we have used 32.9 cm³ of HCl to titrate with ammonia. Moving on to the last part of the experiment, which is spectrophotometric analysis of copper-2 ion, and these are the results for the adsorbents.
For synthesis products, concentrated ammonia solutions is used as solvents for ligand substitution reactions. The use of less polar solvents, 95% ethanol, is to precipitate out the deep blue color copper complex.
For the gravimetric analysis, after adding 6 molar nitric acid into the synthesized copper complex, it will be ionized into its respective cations and anions. From here, lead-2-acetate is added to react with sulfate ion to form the insoluble salt, which is lead-2-sulfate. By knowing its mass, simple calculation can be carried out to determine the mass percentage of sulfate ion in the copper complex, which is 39.15%. For the volumetric analysis part, acid-base titration is used in determining the amount of ammonia as it acts as weak base. Methyl orange acts as an indicator, and the titration is stopped once it reaches the endpoint, whereby the mixture turns to reddish-orange color. By knowing the volume of hydrochloric acid used during titration, simple calculation can be carried out to determine the mass percentage of ammonia in the copper complex, which is 28.10%. For the spectrophotometric analysis part, the more copper-2 ion presents, the higher the absorbance value. A calibration curve is plotted after scanning the blend and analyte solution, and the unknown concentration of copper in the sample can be determined by interpolation. By knowing its concentration, simple calculation can be carried out to determine the mass percentage of copper-2 ion in the copper complex, which is 26.09%. From the mass percentage of water, just simply subtract these 3 mass percentages from 100%, which is 6.66%. The mass percentage obtained are used to determine the empirical formula of the copper complex. With all the information obtained, the theoretical yield of the copper complex can be calculated from this chemical equation. The percentage yield of this experiment is 61.75%, which is considered as fair.
That's all for us. Thank you for watching.
Remember to like our video
And drop your comment in the comment box.
Bye!